guys, welcome to the Yeah, She's Driven podcast. I am here with Rebecca Zung, and is it
Zung.
Sorry, Zung. And you can tell we just met each other, but we're in a portion of our conversation of getting to know each other. And she started to talk about something that I'm like, oh my gosh, we need to talk about this on the podcast. So first of all, Rebecca, share a little bit about your background, and then I'm going to pick up on that conversation because it's hot.
So I've actually pivoted several times in my life, but right now, I always say I'm a lawyer by trade, but I don't really practice that much anymore because what I do is I teach people how to negotiate with narcissists, either in business or like family law matters or whatever. And I have a YouTube channel and several courses and resources so that
You're kind of attorney turned almost digital marketer now, which is such
I am a digital marketer now. Yeah.
Attorney turned digital marketer and speaker, and I love the story of how YouTuber, and you basically start diving in. Sales and negotiation obviously is hugely connected to be successful as an attorney, and so that makes sense. First of all, everybody who's looking for a bridge to like really look at the niche that you're wanting to dive into. I mean, you don't have to make it up. You know what I mean? It's the thing that you're actually so good at that it's like it's just you could do it laying down. And so I love how you made that bridge and that connection and then started, applying it to a different set of people. But the interesting part that I find really interesting that sets you apart is this whole conversation around narcissism and doing marriage, getting out of marriage, doing business with a narcissist. Do you know Chalene Johnson?
No.
Chalene Johnson's big on well, she was incredibly big in Beachbody, and then she turned into a digital marketer, and she's built multiple companies.
Okay, I'm familiar with Beachbody. I just didn't know her name.
She's great. She was reading a book not too long ago about how narcissistic a lot of people are and don't even realize it. Like even when you're having a conversation with somebody, having the like grabbing the conversation going, oh yeah, that reminds me of this. Like it's like there's these different layers of narcissism that some people are carrying and don't even realize they're carrying. So I think this is a fascinating conversation. So tell us a little bit how you dove into this and you started applying this with sales.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think definitely what you're saying is 100% true. It's a spectrum. All of us in some ways, it's not that we're narcissists, but we all want to feel seen, heard, and know that we matter and that we're valued. That's just part of being human. It's when you get all the way to the end of the spectrum and you only care about yourself mattering and nobody else. So that's, kind of the crux of it. But how I got into it is I had the largest family law practice in Southwest Florida. I had a huge practice, huge. And I represented celebrities and billionaires and all kinds of people. And I found that I am an entrepreneur at heart. I loved building that practice and getting it to where I wanted it to be. I hated the gerbil wheel phase. Like, okay, now all I'm doing is running cases. And it was just not fun for me anymore. So I wanted to do something to make my heart sing and that I was passionate about. And I am a personality type that I have to have meaning to my work. I have to feel like there's a cause and, I'm helping people. And so I didn't know what I was going to do next. I just knew it was going to be something else. And so I made a huge change. I took my practice, I merged with two other guys. I'm still a named partner at a firm in Florida. But I basically said, here's my clients, pay me a percentage. And that's what I still have with them now, almost 4 years later. So it allowed me the space to be able to think about what do I want to do next. So I had already written a book called Breaking Free years ago. So I thought, let me write another book. So I wrote a book on negotiation. I had been speaking on negotiation for years. I was a keynote speaker for the American Bar Association. I spoke on negotiation a lot.
Yeah.
So I got Robert Shapiro to write the foreword for it. And when all of that was happening, I was listening to an entrepreneur's podcast and I happened to hear Russell Brunson on this podcast. I'd never heard of him. I didn't know who he was, But I loved what he was saying and I loved his energy. And on this podcast, he says, oh, grab my free book. It's just for you guys, just for your guests. Go to expertsecrets.com, get your free book, just pay the shipping. Of course, now I know that was a funnel. I did not know that at the time, but I go and I'm like, oh, free book. Cool. Go get his book, start reading. I'm like, oh, this is what I need to be doing right here.
Yeah.
And, turning my knowledge into something. And so the first thing that I did was these breaking free divorce master classes, which I had developed and everything, but I wasn't really sure how to market them and how to do it the right way. So they just kind of sat there for a little while. And then I did the negotiation book and I thought, I'm going to do videos on negotiation. But at that same time, I realized I was dealing with a narcissist. So when I moved out to California, I was talking to somebody and it seemed like we had synergy. And so we decided to start this type of business, which I don't want to say because I don't want it to like go back.
Yeah, for sure.
But I realized that this person, somebody actually said to me, oh, she's a covert narcissist. And I thought, what is that? Never even heard that term. So they said, oh, get this book. It's the Covert Passive Aggressive Narcissist. I'm like, okay. So I go get this book and I'm reading this book on the plane on the way back to Florida for Christmas, not this past year, but the year before. And I'm like, the whole time out loud, my husband's next to me. I'm like, oh my God, this is this person. Oh my God. And my husband's like, shush, but I'm like, I can't even help myself over here.
Right.
And so I just started diving into everything narcissism. And that's when I realized, oh, I could actually apply what I've learned about this to negotiating. I started doing YouTube videos on that. My channel,
let's get into that for a second. So, because we'll put the notes below so people can dive into videos and go into more of that, of your story. When someone's like, how does someone know if they're even in a conversation with a narcissist? Like, how does someone even know that? How do you identify it?
It's hard to know in the beginning, especially because they are usually very charming. They do know how to manipulate their way into situations and with people. They're very, very good at reading people. And so they know how to present themselves so that they appear perfect. So usually when they come along, it's like, oh my God, I just love this person. They're amazing. Where has this person been all my life? Even if it's not just a romantic situation, this is the same thing in a business situation.
Yeah.
But they rush the relationship usually. We have to be best friends, we have to be business partners, we have to move in together, we have to whatever the next step is, let's get there. Because what they're doing is they're grooming you to become, part of narcissistic supply for them. They want to start getting to the point where they have control over you. So then they start to devalue. So, you're in the situation where, okay, they've love bombed you, or, sometimes it's called the idealization phase. Now, all of a sudden you get these weird little messages. Like sometimes it's passive aggressive. Sometimes it's, not so much so, but, they might say something like, oh, you better watch your diet as you're eating a burger or something. Oh, you better watch your diet, with your metabolism, you're going to end up being really overweight, one day, things like that.
So they're chipping away at you.
Chipping away. Yeah, totally. And so and then they'll go back to love bombing or suddenly they're ghosting you and they're not responding to texts and all that. And then you're like, where have you been? And they're like, I was working. And they make it seem like it's your problem and you're crazy and you're overreacting. And, and then so you get into this cycle. But a lot of times, because they've ensconced themselves into you so fast, it becomes hard to get them out right away because now they're already your business partner or now they've already moved into your house or whatever it is. And so it's hard to get them out sometimes.
So interesting. So is there cures for narcissism? Can people like fix themselves from that?
So I asked, you know, who I asked about this was Dr. Bandy Lee, who's a really, really famous psychiatrist. I don't know if you know who she is, but she wrote the book, The Dangerous Case of Donald Trump, where she took 27 mental health professionals from all, you know, the top of the world and had all these people weigh in on Donald Trump's mental health and whatever. And so I interviewed her about narcissism because she's totally an expert in the field.
Yeah.
And she said that they can be rehabilitated, but it's very, very rare because they have to be willing to shine the light on themselves and do the hard work and sit with a therapist, and just very few ever do.
Interesting. Fascinating. It's so fascinating. So now you're taking, so I mean, that seems like a small niche of people for you to really specialize in for negotiating. So can we go into that a little bit?
You would think, but my channel has in over just over a year 8 million views and 135,000 subscribers.
Wow.
Yeah, so everybody's dealing with them.
That's fascinating. So okay, so let's talk a little bit about negotiating. Let's talk a little bit even about negotiating with someone who is narcissistic, or who is extraordinarily controlling, and you're having a hard time even getting across the finish line of a win-win, or of a win in anything. So wherever you want to go with that, whether that's an entrepreneur for sales. I mean, a lot of our audience is entrepreneurs. So if you want to talk about like you've got products and services, and you're putting them out there, and you find yourself in a situation where you're with an extraordinarily controlling or dominant person, or even somebody who's on the spectrum of narcissism, where do you go with that?
Yeah, gosh, there's so many places that you can go with that. So the first thing that I want to say is that negotiating with a regular person, a reasonable person, is a whole different ballgame. And the problem that a lot of people have is that they approach all negotiations the same.
Mm,
They assume that there is something that the other person wants that will resolve the issue. So, you find yourself a lot of times saying, what is it that they want? And that is the flaw in the design when you are negotiating with a high conflict personality,
interesting.
because they're not looking for a resolution. They're getting narcissistic supply from watching you squirm, from jerking you around, moving the goalposts, seeing you be intimidated. That's the payoff for them. So when you're sitting, reasonable person is sitting on the other side going, what is it that they want? I'll just give it to them.
Hmm.
Well, go ahead and try to give it to them. And then they're going to be moving the goalposts, and they're going to be saying, well, now that's no longer the deal. And I've changed it because you did this, you waited too long, whatever they want to say, because the end game for them is that there's no end.
Ooh,
And so that's the flaw in the thinking of a reasonable person right from the get go. So you have to understand that narcissists they're actually the easiest personality on the planet to understand. They're only driven by one thing, and that's narcissistic supply.
what is that? What is
That is
narcissistic?
anything that feeds their ego. So narcissists have no inner sense of value. I always say they're like the hollow chocolate Easter bunnies. Like, they look nice on the inside. They have nothing going on on the outside. They look nice, but nothing on the inside. So you you have to remember that there's like a hierarchy of supply for them. And grade A diamond level supply for any narcissist is image. How do I look? How do I look to the community? How do I look to people I respect? How do I look to people that I think are more prestigious than I am? Somebody that I want something from, my employees, my coworkers, you name it. But image is always grade A, number one.
Hmm.
Um, a lot of people make the mistake of thinking that it's money. is what they're driven by, but that is not always the case. That's usually just a vehicle. So, the grade A diamond level supply for them is also adulation, compliments, money, prestige, having the right house, living in the right neighborhood, having the right career, being successful, all of those things, right? Now, it doesn't mean that everybody who has those things is a narcissist, but
Right.
that is, a lot of times people are driven by that. Narcissists are driven by that. So what I call like the dark underbelly of supply is um the devaluing, the debasing, the controlling, the passive aggression, the kind of like, if I'm not going to get supply from you from one direction, then I'm going to get it from you from a different direction.
That just sounds like a nightmare to me.
It is a nightmare. But here's the problem. They throw in their like love bombs and their future faking and they're doing all these things. And so there's a study out by Dr. Robert Sapolsky from Stanford where he actually tested monkeys and gave them a reward every single time they did something good. And then he gave them a reward like intermittently where they wouldn't know when they were going to get it. And when they didn't know when they were going to get the reward, the dopamine levels in their brain actually rose to the level of cocaine, which means that the fact that the narcissist is intermittently giving love bombs and all of that, it causes these dopamine levels in your brain to escalate. And so you actually become physiologically addicted
Wow.
to this person.
Wow, that's such a trip. God, girl, this is such a trip. It's amazing that you took a hard moment in your life and you turned it into something that you dove into, and now that thing that was kind of coming into your life that was not something healthy has turned into a complete blessing of a very, very, powerful YouTube channel and a whole new niche in society where you can take this and actually do some incredible good, which is incredible. I love this. I mean, I absolutely love it. So what does, and we'll kind of come down on this conversation, and you guys, all of the notes to get a hold of Rebecca, her YouTube channel, everything is below. So I absolutely recommend. I know somebody who was with somebody who I believe is narcissistic. Like, I was like, this person's super narcissistic. And through that, it was, so funny that I just started noticing Instagram and YouTube videos around this topic. And one Saturday morning, I sat on my couch, and God bless the fact that I had a moment without my son, like to just sit there and just like be quiet. And I watched a video and I was so fascinated by this conversation. You know what I mean? Because it is fascinating. But saying that, like, where are you going with this next? What's the next big, vision that you're going after that you can see right now?
I have a few things that are exciting. I mean, I just launched the business course not that long ago, and I'm launching a certification course this year as well for lawyers, judges, and mediators, because so many people around the world are asking me about, can you help me find a lawyer that specializes in narcissism? Well, nobody was ever doing this until I came along. So,
Yeah.
so that's the next step for that. And then as part of that, actually, in creating my own community of lawyers, I am also founding a legal aid foundation with Lindsay Snyder Ellingson, who owns In-N-Out Burgers. And so we are going to be providing help for legal fees to people all over the world and have them have access to actually good lawyers instead of,
Oh, good.
just whoever. Yeah.
So good. Way to seriously. I mean, this is crazy how this has opened up, isn't it?
I know. It is so
I
crazy.
mean, you could have curled up in the middle of the living room floor and just waved the flag, and
Which is
then
what I wanted to do a lot of
yeah,
times when I was dealing with this person. I mean, it's hard to even describe, especially because obviously this wasn't a romantic partner for me. This was just
yeah.
a business person, and yet it just almost made me insane. Like literally, I had to like deprogram my brain from this person. And I had been a practicing attorney for years and had achieved all of these accolades. And, so it's not like people would look at me and go, oh, she would be an easy pushover,
Right.
but it happened to me. And so I am honest about it and say it without shame because I want people to feel like okay to come forward and say, it's okay. It can happen to anybody.
So good. Well, I just send so many blessings over to the work that you're doing, and I love that you're out there, and even though you're not practicing law, you're still owning law firms and still taking that and bringing it forward in your future and continuing to help people both on the high level and also on providing great attorneys for people who just need great attorneys. So much love to you, Rebecca. Any final words to the entrepreneurs listening right now?
Anybody who wants to grab my free Crush My Negotiation prep worksheet can get that at winmynegotiation.com.
So good.
And, check out my YouTube channel, or if you just put in Negotiating with a Narcissist on YouTube, I will pop right up. And my Instagram.
So good. We'll put all that below in the show notes as well. So much love. All right, you guys, thanks for listening to the She's Driven podcast. Please stop and leave a review. If you love Rebecca, just rave about her like crazy so that people go find her, and we'll put all of her details in the show notes. Talk to you guys soon. Bye.